Good morning. So I finally got to get started on Mariame Kaba's "We Do This Till We Free Us." We do this till we free us. Abolitionist organizing and transforming justice. I finally got to start it yesterday. Very well worth it so far, which does not surprise me. But I thought I'd share a little bit from the beginning out of it because it's just it's lovely, it's nourishing, and it has good words in it for people who are maybe kind of catching up with the times. So that's what I'm going to read. It's a few pages, so it'll be a few minutes of me reading, just if you kind of want to pace yourself. But I guess it's timed. You can see the video time. Okay, so this is from Mariame Kaba's "We Do This Till We Free Us," which is on Haymarket Books. There you can see their little logo, Haymarket Books, which has tons of great books. Haymarket Books is an excellent publishing house and distributor, and you should go check them out for sure. Hundreds of amazing radical titles. Okay, so this essay is titled "So You're Thinking About Becoming an Abolitionist," and it's level October 2020. So she's kind of dating these essays like they're levels in a game or a revolution. I love it. Today, more people are discussing and contemplating prison abolition than ever before. Decades of collective organizing have brought us to this moment. Some are newly aware that prisons, policing, and the criminal punishment system in general are racist, oppressive, and ineffective. However, some might be wondering, is abolition too drastic? Can we really get rid of prisons and policing altogether? The short answer, we can, we must, we are. Prison industrial complex abolition is a political vision, a structural analysis of oppression, and a practical organizing strategy. While some people might think of abolition as primarily a negative project, let's tear everything down tomorrow and hope for the best. Prison industrial complex abolition is a vision of a restructured society, a world where we have everything we need: food, shelter, education, health, art, beauty, clean water, and more things that are foundational to our personal and community safety. Every vision is also a map. As freedom fighter Kwame Ture taught us, when you see people call themselves revolutionary, always talking about destroying, but never talking about building or creating, they're not revolutionary. They do not understand the first thing about revolution. It's creating. Prison industrial complex abolition is a positive project that focuses in part on building a society where it is possible to address harm without relying on structural forms of oppression or the violent systems that increase it. Some people may ask, does this mean I can never call the cops if my life is in serious danger? Abolition does not center that question. Instead, abolition challenges us all to ask, why do we have no other well-resourced options? And pushes us to creatively consider how we might grow, build, and try other avenues to reduce harm. Repeated attempts to improve the sole option offered by the state, despite how consistently corrupt and injurious it has proven itself, will neither reduce nor address the harm that actually required the call. We need more and effective options for the greatest number of people. Let's begin our abolitionist journey, not with the question, what do we have now and how can we make it better? Instead, ask, what can we imagine for ourselves in the world? If we do that, then boundless possibilities of a more just world await us. An abolitionist journey ignites other questions capable of meaningful and transformative pathways. What work do prisons and policing actually do? Most people assume that incarceration helps to reduce violence and crime, thinking the criminal punishment system might be racist, sexist, classist, ableist, and unfair, but at least it keeps me safe from violence and crime. Facts and history tell a different story. Increasing rates of incarceration have a minimal impact on crime rates. Research and common sense suggest that economic precarity is correlated with higher crime rates. Moreover, crime and harm are not synonymous. All that is criminalized isn't harmful, and all that is harmful isn't criminalized. For example, wage theft by employers isn't generally criticized, but it is definitely harmful. Even if the criminal punishment system were free of racism, classism, sexism, and other isms, it would not be capable of effectively addressing harm. For example, if we want to reduce or end sexual and gendered violence, putting a few perpetrators in prison does little to stop the many other perpetrators. It does nothing to change a culture that makes this harm imaginable, to hold the individual perpetrator accountable, to support their transformation, or to meet the needs of survivors. A transformative justice movement led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color survivors has emerged in the past 2 decades to offer a different vision of ending violence and transforming our communities. A world without harm isn't possible, and it isn't what an abolitionist vision proposed to achieve. Rather, abolitionist politics and practice contend that disposing of people by locking them away in jails and prisons does nothing significant to prevent, reduce, or transform harm in the aggregate. It rarely, if ever, encourages people to take accountability for their actions. Instead, our adversarial court system discourages people from ever acknowledging, let alone taking responsibility for the harm they have caused. At the same time, it allows us to avoid our own responsibilities to hold each other accountable, instead delegating it to a third party, one that has been built to hide away social and political failures. An abolitionist imagination takes us along a different path than if we try to simply replace the prison industrial complex with similar structures. None of us have all the answers, or we would have ended oppression already. But if we keep building the world we want, trying new things, and learning from our mistakes, new possibilities emerge. Here's how to begin. First, when we set about trying to transform society, we must remember that we ourselves will need to transform. Our imagination of what a different world can be is limited. We are deeply entangled in the very systems we are organizing to change. White supremacy, misogyny, ableism, classism, homophobia, and transphobia exist everywhere. We have all so thoroughly internalized these logics of oppression that if oppression were to end tomorrow, we would be likely to reproduce previous structures. Being intentionally in relation to one another, a part of a collective, helps to not only imagine new worlds, but also to imagine ourselves differently. Join some of the many organizations, faith groups, and ad hoc collectives that are working to learn and unlearn, for example. What it feels like to actually be safe, or those that are naming and challenging white supremacy and racial capitalism. Secondly, we must imagine and experiment with new collective structures that enable us to take more principled action, such as embracing collective responsibility to resolve conflicts. We can learn lessons from revolutionary movements like Brazil's landless workers movement that have noted that when we create social structures that are less hierarchical and more transparent, we reduce violence and harm. Third, we must simultaneously engage in strategies that reduce contact between people and the criminal legal system. Abolitionists regularly engage in organizing campaigns and mutual aid efforts that move us closer to our goals. We must remember that the goal is not to create a gentler prison and policing system, because, as I have noted, a gentler prison and policing system cannot adequately address harm. Instead, we want to divest from these systems as we create the world in which we want to live. Fourth, as scholar and activist Ruth Wilson Gilmore notes, building a different world requires that we not only change how we address harm, but also that we change everything. The prison industrial complex is linked in its logics and operation with all other systems, from how students are pushed out of schools when they don't perform as expected, to how people with disabilities are excluded from our communities, and the ways in which workers are treated as expendable in our capitalist system. Changing everything might sound daunting, but it also means that there are many places to start, infinite opportunities to collaborate, and endless imaginative interventions and experiments to create. Let's begin our abolitionist journey, not with the question, what do we have now and how can we make it better? Instead, let's ask, what can we imagine for ourselves and the world? If we do that, then boundless possibilities of a more just world await us. I hope all of you read this book. There's so much in here, and I mean, I haven't got that far in it, but I already know that there's so much in here. Other people are talking about it too. So this is a good book, I think, to take a look at and see, you know, from your own point of view in the world, to see what you think about what Mariame Kaba has to say. Prison industrial complex abolition is definitely not new. Defunding the police is definitely not new. It's been going on for a long time. Especially, I mean, I personally remember the bloating of police departments in the early 1990s to use police officers as regressive tax agents. That's 50% of police right now. So for anyone, you know, who's interested in where to start, like Mariame Kaba says, I think that's something, because even people who feel like they like police or feel like they're protected by police really should not want them used as regressive tax agents. Like, that's really not how you should want your police used if you're even behind that kind of social model. If you're not behind that kind of social model, then creating what comes next, not in terms of another punishment system, but in terms of transforming ourselves, which is what Mariame Kaba is talking about. And again, that's not a new concept either, but it's like, we're doing it. Like, things have really transformed. Our ability to talk about defunding the police is what am I trying to say here? People are listening, like, it's being taken seriously. More people in the United States feel like defunding and disarming police is something that's going to need to happen than ever before. So that's the building that we're talking about. So even if an idea isn't specifically new, it's at a different place in the kind of continuous revolution of modern life, which I can go on and on about, which I do on a podcast called Secret Antenna with Callie Tinsel. So they and I discuss all of these topics. And so if you really want to know the big, deep history behind U.S. Policing and oil for weapons and things like that are of interest to you, find us. We're Secret Antenna. Otherwise, read this book and keep your mind open to how you can transform our justice, transform our world. All right, have a great one, everybody.